Murray Darling is an interconnected system of rivers and of lakes in southeastern Australia. It covers 4 states, which include Queensland, South Australia, Victoria, and New South Wales. Each year, the Murray Darling Basin accounts for 2.2 million people living on the Murray Darling Basin. It accounts for $8 billion in revenue generated due to tourists. It also accounts for 40 different Indigenous communities that live on around the Murray Darling Basin. The Murray Darling Basin also produces about $22 billion a year of food and fibre each year, with 40% of Australia's total agriculture coming from the Murray Darling Basin. With millions also relying on the Murray Darling Basin for drinking water, it is also clear to see now that the Murray Darling Basin is an integral part of southeastern Australia. With the Murray Darling Basin providing so much support to Australia, it is important that we make sure to safeguard it. However, right now, the Murray Darling Basin is reducing in the amount of water it has. And with reducing the amount of water, this will definitely affect the water quality and the water availability. As the Murray Darling Basin's water is being depleted over time due to increased usage, it is particularly important to think as to what that's doing to the general environment of the Murray Darling Basin. As water usage is increasing, this has seen degradation of the wetlands and the rivers of the Murray Darling Basin. With this happening, this has seen a significant effect on the birds and the fish's reproduction cycle. This has seen the amount of birds and fish in the land of the Murray Darling Basin and surrounds, it has seen a decrease. And as a result of all of these factors, it has seen about nearly 100 endangered species in the Murray Darling Basin. As the fishes and the birds are struggling significantly, this is going to have a massive impact on the tourism industry. Yes, with COVID-19, tourists from international areas are not coming down to Australia, but we're still seeing a domestic effect on tourism with the Murray Darling Basin not being in its absolute best shape. And with that being said, it's also important to think about the economic impact, yes, but also the social and the environmental impact with this. So with not having as many tourists come down, then socially, yes, people can't actually come down to the Murray Darling Basin as a source of recreation. We think of the Murray Darling Basin as a place where people can fish. With there being less fish, they can't fish. And this is going to affect recreation for Australians. And then we also think environmentally. Environmentally, this place is so important to us. With the degradation, we're going to see species become extinct. I think of the Murray Darling Basin cod that has become critically endangered now due to the degradation that has occurred. We've also think of overfishing as well, in which the land has been overfished, or the river has been overfished so much that now fishes are becoming near extinct. Additionally, I also think of the First Nations. The First Nations have a really significant relevance to the river with the term of cultural flows. So they really care about the river, and as protecting the land, which they had said before, all the way when they came back here over 40,000 years ago, they had a goal to make sure that the rivers and the creeks, the lakes, they wanted to make sure that they stayed in good shape, in good health. And with what's happening right now with the water depletion of the Murray Darling Basin, that is extremely hard to manage. How are they able, and how's anybody able to make sure that the health of the Murray Darling Basin stays at the level that it was when the water is being depleted from further use? How can we make sure that the First Nation people, how can we make sure that they can maintain their task of having cultural flow? And how can we make sure that we keep the health of the Murray Darling Basin at a very, very high level? So first of all, we think of water quality. So with water quality, we just need to make sure that the water in the Murray Darling Basin makes sure to stay at a very, very high level. So we think of all the tests we can do. So we can test for turbidity, we can test for pH, we can test for temperature of water. We can also make sure that the oxygen levels aren't too high, which can then cause an algal bloom, which can affect the level of the water and if it's safe. So I think these are all tests that we can do, and this is what the Murray Darling Basin is doing under the Murray Darling Basin plan. Right now, across all parts of the Murray Darling Basin, so all the way in Queensland, all the way west in South Australia, and all the way south in Victoria, they're doing these tests to make sure that the quality of the river and of the lakes are in tip-top shape. For water availability, El Niño, so this is a weather pattern which was meant to increase the amount of water in the northern part of the Murray Darling Basin in Queensland. This actually hasn't really come to fruition yet. So we haven't actually seen as much water as we probably wanted to come into the Murray Darling Basin. So right now, the Murray Darling Basin, I believe, is around about 50%. And obviously we want to see that increase. So while we wait for El Niño, so more of that rain to come, it's important to think about how we can make sure to keep the availability of water coming. Under the Murray Darling Basin Plan, it is determined as to how much water can be taken out of the basin each year to make sure that there's enough use for the farmers who are on the land actually making agriculture, but also for other communities which find it extremely important to have that water. So each year, it's important that we make sure to only take out, that particular amount of water. If we take up more than that, then we can't actually make sure to maintain what we need to do in the Murray Darling Basin region. While we wait for rain to come, and hopefully it does come soon, while we wait for that, we need to make sure that we have the water availability, and we also make sure we need to maintain that water quality aspect of the Murray Darling Basin Plan. If we do this, we give the best possible chance that we have right now to be able to maintain this health in the Murray Darling Basin. I would not like to see any more impact occur, environmentally especially, to the Murray Darling Basin. We need the Murray Darling Basin for our agriculture. 40% of our agriculture is there. 100% of our rice is grown in the Murray Darling Basin region. We need to make sure that that's maintained. And if that's maintained, then that's great. And then we can then focus on the tourism industry. $8 billion comes from the Murray Darling Basin and people becoming tourists around that region. We need to make sure that we keep that impact. $8 billion does a lot for our economy. Finally, I think one thing that could be added to the Murray Darling Basin would be to give the First Nation peoples the access to cultural flows. So ever since the Indigenous people came here, tens of thousands of years ago, they made a spiritual obligation to protect the land that we gather on today. So for one thing, that is the rivers. So the rivers, the lakes, the creeks, it is important that we make them and allow them to have the opportunity to be able to do what they have wanted to do for hundreds of thousands of years. The state governments and the federal governments, we need to consider why they haven't allowed this to happen yet and how we can get that to happen in the future with cultural flows. They've been on this land for so long, they have clearly done an amazing job with what they were doing, allowing the creeks, the rivers to flourish. They allowed them to do what they were doing. They did their hunting, and it was clearly a good idea. And what happened? There was no effect on the rivers, on degradation. There was none of that at all. Yes, they've released a report on this, on cultural flow, and making sure that they are allowed to have a say, and their opinion actually does matter to the Murray Darling Basin Plan. But that's simply not enough. They've been on this land for so long, why don't we just allow them to have this chance to control the water and how it's being divvied up? First Nation people know what they're doing with the rivers. They know what they're doing with the creeks. They know what they're doing with Australia. That's what I think should be done on top of the Murray Darling Basin Plan. The state and federal governments have said that they will consider it in the future, but I think right now is the time to act. We are going to lose a large amount of fish soon. We're going to lose a large amount of birds soon. They're critically endangered species. We need to act now. I'm going to leave the video here. I think what's happening right now can be improved quite a lot, particularly with the Murray Darling Basin. Yes, we need to wait for water to come. We need rain to bless us to come into the Murray Darling Basin, and that may take some time. With that, and the Murray Darling Basin Plan coming, we need to allow for cultural flows. We need Indigenous people to be able to control as to how the water is being used in the Murray Darling Basin. I think this is probably one of the best ways that we could do it. And guys, please leave your comments down below. I'd be very interested to hear what you think about cultural flows and about the Murray Darling Basin. Did you know about the Murray Darling Basin? I know for me, I didn't know much about it until a couple of years ago when I had to do an assignment on it for economics. So anyways, guys, with that being said, I hope you guys make sure to take really good use of your water, particularly when we are in an Australian summer, which it can have a drought. We can have a lot of hot days. So guys, with that being said, I'm going to leave this video here. I hope you guys have had a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys in my next video. See ya!